we're gonna move on from this. As much as I don't really want to, I could do this all night, but we're gonna move on to our special guest of the night. If y'all notice this scruffy headed nerf herder in my lower left hand corner, at least how I see him, this is Brian. Say hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
So Brian, our special guest tonight, he works pretty much all over everywhere in the Hollywood circles. He has a lot of crazy, stupid, awesome connections, and he develops these into essentially what amounts to a profession, which is really cool. He's working on a book that kind of entails, as far as I remember being told, it's about how to maintain and build these connections with. I don't know if it's Hollywood specifically or just in general. Brian, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, I mean, for as long as I can remember, people were like, you get the reputation of being a networker or quote, everybody. And I'm like, I just meet people and I connect the dots. And for a very long time, like 10 years, college friends, everything, people are like, dude, you need to like write a book and put some of this stuff down. And so for a good stint, I've been putting those things down. And, during quarantine, during COVID, I've had a lot of time to just be like, how am I going to talk to people during COVID? And, where I might have had so many, so much content and so much information before, it's actually grown a lot during COVID because there's actually really great ways to connect with people while you're still sitting at home.
So, you have a pretty decent body of work in terms of who you've worked for in the past. Who are some of the companies and people you've worked for that have helped kind of garner this experience for you?
Sure. I mean, I moved out here to be a rep originally, so on the management side. So worked at a company called The Collective, which was pretty, robust. Some of the guys that like started and created like the Backstreet Boys and launched the careers of Leonardo DiCaprio
Wow.
and Cameron Diaz, in the 90s. And, some of those guys, do their next gig and their next company. And so came out here to actually work in music, love rock and roll, kid from the Midwest, was in the military, same as Sam. And, after, 10 years of that, I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, you kind of get to that vibe of like, where do you want to be? Where do you want to go? And from there, I pivoted, to a little more on the TV side as Netflix was coming up and streaming and everything. Worked at NBC, worked at Fox. I had a stint of working in the nonprofit space. People said, you really understand relationships and people, and there was an opportunity to go work in City Hall for Mayor Garcetti and one of his divisions, and went from there to work for the VA and EDD, so the state of California, and also at USC in the School of Social Work. So a lot of those jobs kind of pivoted, and then it kind of came back to entertainment, and started working a little more on the production side and working a lot with the Writers Guild has a lot of great programs out there, and a friend of mine who well, I'll say friend, that's a good thing for the book, you say friend, but somebody I met, that knew another content. We were talking about a couple shows at HBO, and they said, if you know one of the showrunners, you should go and just send an email. And 6 years of knowing this person, never asked for anything. I just said, hey, do you need a PA, or do you anything? And from there it just kept going, and now I've worked on like 22 shows and movies in the last like 3 years or so. A lot of HBO, a lot of Warner Brothers. I'm on a FX Disney show right now. So yeah, it just keeps going. That's been, that's a nice thing I was telling Sam tonight is tonight's actually my 10-year anniversary. So I've been in LA 10 years today, and that was another reason I was like, that's pretty freaking cool. I'd love to join you guys tonight.
That's really cool. Everyone tells me that's when you like it takes 10 years to really become what you're supposed to be in Los Angeles. Do you feel that has happened? You got where you wanted to be at?
I'm on Chucklesluts. I made it. What are you talking about?
Dab it up.
Put that dab away. No.
Oh, sorry. My bad. We just.
No.
You just undab?
I did. I packed that dab right back into where it belongs.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I asked for this. I don't know what I was expecting.
So I met Brian actually in a group called VFT, which is now called VME. It's a bunch of soldiers who decided to get in the industry, and were unfortunately very, very underrepresented. And I've always wanted to ask Brian, because I actually never did. Like, how did that become to be exactly? Because that's such a unique but unbelievably important. It's become to be an unbelievably important tool for me and hundreds of other veterans. How did that become to be?
Sure. Well, I mean, I was and am a member, so I don't have any leadership roles in the organization or whatnot. But I mean, there's in Hollywood, there's a lot of organizations, and you hear about things. And I was working at a company, Zodiac at the time, which got bought out by Benning J. It's like the biggest independent production company out there now these days. I think they make a couple of the shows you were talking about earlier. Actually, like Queer Eye and all those. I think they're some of the shows that make them. But anyway, I mean, some of the vets got together, and I think they've had iterations of these things for years. There's a thing called combat casting. Shout out to Jody Hart. Started that, ran that for 20 years, getting people on a lot of shows. Guys like Dale Dye, who every single platoon and every movie, these technical advisors. And so they kind of came together, and some of them, and started this group. And where it started at I don't know, 50, 100 maybe in the beginning. I think I joined 6 months in, and there was X amount there. I mean, they're like 4,200 now nationwide, veterans that are a part of this organization. But the interesting thing too is that it's funny, that number, 4,200 veterans in there, and there is 42,000 veteran nonprofits in the entire United States. So what's that?
It's 42, man. It's slipping in, slipping
it's the
cracks. It's the answer to everything.
Yes, it is. It is the answer to everything. So says Douglas Adams.
Yeah, but no, these things all connect. I mean, we were talking a little bit before, mentioned stuff about diversity and equity and inclusion. I've been having these conversations, with a lot of big executives and everything. Even the job I got right now, an executive over at FX, said, we talked about diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives for a long time, not just vets, but, women, minorities, LGBTQIA, youth, ageism, disability, all the way down the spectrum. 34 different areas of DE and I out there. So, these topics really come up, and how people can really, connect those dots on how they can help each other out.
Very cool. What about you guys? Do you have any questions for Mr. Brian over here?
I just have, so just specifically in like your line, like what's sort of the most what's like the most like fulfilling thing like you've got to do out here? You seem to be very invested in diversity and helping out not just your peers, but peers that need to be helped. Like what's your favorite project you've done that's kind of pushed in that direction?
Well, I said this, you don't spend 9, almost 10 years in the military, come back and want to see people still treat each other the way they do or be the way they are. And so I feel like, 10 years now out here, I've been able to see that entire projection of what it looks like for, things to change and the needle to move forward, with EDD, state of California, we have what's called the Los Angeles Veterans Employment Committee. So I've been around for 40 plus years. Basically every geographic area in California, and I think nationwide, have these different community collaboratives for veterans and people with disabilities and women and all the aspects. And so I've been a part of that for 7 years, and I'm now actually currently the chair for LA. So there's 300,000 vets in LA, 2 million in the state, 22 million nationwide. And, whatever best practices I can have with people, in New York or, Vetlanta, as they call it, Combined Arms in Houston, we talk to each other and see how we can kind of put those best practices together. And I think that's the thing that I really enjoy and take the most joy out of, is seeing that how whatever it is that we do in California can help anyone anywhere else. I'm from small town Indiana, so I'm a transplant out here too.
Okay,
Cool.
That is very cool. Without naming any names or companies or anything that might get you in trouble, what's like the worst experience you've had on set?
On set, man.
Because we all have horror stories.
I'm trying to think. You're stumping me a little bit. I mean, I'm thinking about
You're too
current
positive.
stuff. I think
You're so kind.
Also, I cover my bases, what I would say is this, is that I think it's just like in general, just not knowing what you're going into. Everybody wants the gig, everybody wants the opportunity, everybody wants the door open. But the truth is like, once you got that chance, like you really got to do a great job. Like me, I'm in my current job, that I'm working because somebody said to me, that executive, hey, you've been great with us. Do you want to come work on one of our shows? Yeah, sure. What show would you like to work on? And I threw a show out that I really liked, and I'm working on it. And so, that also is like, you're paving the way. So I think that it's really good for people to always remember that it's not just about you. You're representing a community of people or great individuals like yourself, and you're opening those doors for others that want to be you one day.
Okay. And what so you do have this book that you're working on that kind of talks about networking, the art or business of, however you kind of wish to look at it in perspective. I guess my question to you is, what would be like the best piece of advice in terms of, because for me, for example, I'm good at networking, but I'm not, there are some things that I'm not like great in the process of, like, some people are great openers, some people are great closers, some people are great follow-uppers. What's like the biggest piece of advice you could give to someone to kind of help perfect that process?
I would just say continue the conversation is the most important words. Continue the conversation. Conversations could go for years. My first contact here in LA, I met 12 years ago. That individual's never done anything to help me with my career or given me a gig or anything. They've never made an introduction for me for anything, but I still like consider them one of my favorite people in LA. And as they continue to do their thing, and I do too, those doors will connect. I think it's just continue the conversation and continue the relationship best you can. Have fun with it. I mean, they say that. Again, I don't like the word networking. I prefer relationship building. It really is a process. And even today I went for a walk, right, at 5 o'clock, and right down the street I saw one of my EPs for my show that I'm working on now. He's my neighbor. I had no freaking idea. And it was great. And during filming, he mentioned he liked Frank Zappa a lot. We were talking about some random stuff, and I let him borrow a book of Zappa I had. Like those little small nuances really add up, and you figure out like, who do you really want to connect with, and who's that longevity person. And you don't know, it's all a gamble, it's all it's all chess. But at the same time, like, you're gonna figure out what works for you, what works for them, and just sticking it out. I don't think it's that hard to make it in any industry, even Hollywood. I think it's just about how you approach the situation and how you approach people. That's really all it is.
And I mean, I don't know if you have like a set date in terms of when this book will be published, but are you almost finished? Do you have a person who's ready to rock with you in terms of like a distributor or anything like that?
Not a distributor at this time. I mean, I've had people ask me these questions many times. I mean, I think for me, I actually would like to see the book transition to some kind of IP that you can see something that gives people a little more of a how to do these things. Because I think that again, I don't think that it is about always being at the right place at the right time, or nepotism, or all these things you always hear about, or the college you went to. It's really just about like what you want and how you go about it. So I think that for me, it's like I hope that in the next 6 months I can have a really good feel on it, and I'm trying to put some IP together that I can actually take that as a way to push it out there a little bit more. The book is an added bonus.
Gotcha. And lightning question: who's been your favorite person to work with?
I will say Alec Burke from Barry and Silicon Valley.
Very cool. And we're going to go ahead and wrap up this interview here. Where can we find you in the world?
You can find me on Instagram, just my name, Brian Binkley. And then I'm also Twitter, Brian Binkley 622.
Brian, thank you for being on the show with us. We love having new people on and hearing new perspectives of the world, and just hearing what other people do, because people are the most important thing on this earth, as far as I'm concerned anyway. And it was
like I said, it's my 10-year anniversary today.
Woo!
And I feel very thankful that you guys and appreciate that you invited me to join you guys.
And we love having you. We absolutely do.